Let's go! There's the snap, there's the knee. That's one. You stand up, Jared. Put those arms in the air.
All right. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. It is the Rocked On Syndicate Sports Morning Show, Rise and Grind Morning Show. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Eric. How you doing today?
Fantastic, Will. How about yourself?
Caught you drinking, man. Caught you drinking.
Yeah.
So, hey, good to have you on this morning. It's the 8 a.m. segment. Time to get things rocking and rolling this morning with a little UFL, XFL updates. I think we'll start with that maybe every Rise and Grind morning show. You know, the UFL, XFL is wanted. People want to know more, and we will have a channel starting soon on the UFL, XFL. So we'll look to bring a little bit more interesting topics about football in spring. I mean, we can't get enough of it. I think that we need to talk about it. But there was a subject matter that came out the other day about a player that we all know well from YouTube land, and that's Destroying. And he had a freak incident in this last weekend's game. The hit looked normal. You know, I mean, it was kind of terrible tackling for him, but he fractured his neck on the play. And I mean, he got up, he ran off the field, he looked fine. You could tell he was kind of, moving his head a little bit. But it came out, later on that afternoon that he actually fractured his neck. And see, these are the things that doesn't matter what level of football that you're playing, that these injuries can happen. And we understand, why the NFL is trying to do what they are, and limiting some of these plays. But again, this was a kickoff. So they're trying to limit injuries on kickoffs. And here you have, the kicker fractures his neck on a kickoff. So these plays can still happen. Eric, what do you got to say on the subject here?
Well, it's going to make the whole NFL kickoff interesting because the UFL doesn't use the XFL style kickoff. They still use more of a traditional kickoff. So there are the high impact collisions, and he had very, very poor form in his tackling. It was more of a spear than a tackle. So they teach you from high school on, you never lead with your helmet, and always try to use your shoulder, wrap them up, and when people are coming at you super fast, it's really hard to do sometimes.
So the NFL is making the change this year to the XFL style of kick where they're lined up, 5 yards apart, and they've got that little zone now they have to kick the ball into. And that's, to me, is I didn't think it was really going to change much to, the injury opportunity. I think that this is just kind of a case in point. Maybe it's just a freak accident that injuries are still going to happen. And maybe it's just more about explosive offensive plays that they're looking for. Because I really don't think it's going to do much to stop the injuries, is what they think it is. So best wishes to Destroying. He's obviously going to have a long way back. He's taken years off of football to do his YouTube channel, which has been extremely successful. Finally had an opportunity to kick as a pro, and that was short-lived. So shout out to him. Hopefully he gets better soon. There's some pictures here on the web here if he's already in a neck brace. And man, it sucks, but that was a terrible hit. Absolutely terrible hit. Upcoming game this Sunday. Who do we have this weekend?
All right. So for the UFL, for the Michigan Panthers, we have the Houston Roughnecks coming to town. And they didn't look so hot this last weekend. So I'm going to guess that Michigan should be favored in that game. And then you have the St. Louis Battlehawks at the San Antonio Brahmas. And then you have the Memphis Showboats, who are just destroying everyone, versus the Birmingham Stallions. And then you have the DC Defenders at Arlington Renegades. And I'm really disappointed in the Renegades because last year, when they were part of the XFL, they won the championship and they haven't won a game yet. Wow. And I picked them preseason because they had the uniforms that were most like the Lions. They're blue color. And I put like $20 on them to win the championship. And they made the playoffs barely. And then they won all their playoff games and they won the championship. So I'm really disappointed in the Renegades this year. They're not looking so hot. All they have
to do is get in, man. They just got to get in. That's it. Yep. They just, just like our Lions, they just got to get in and you just let the rest go from there. The other interesting thing that came out this week is there was a letter sent around to the leagues or the league, the NFL franchises. And there was also, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's one of the UFL XFL representatives who was speaking primarily just about contracts and how the NFL is banned from contacting their players. So could you speak to a moment on what the contract talk rules are and when the period ends, when the NFL can actually reach down to these players to try to bring them in?
Sure. So an NFL spokesperson said by email, NFL teams are allowed to contact UFL teams about their players, but cannot sign a UFL player until after the UFL season. NFL teams are not allowed to contact players under contract with the UFL or discuss that player with their agent, the spokesperson said. So they can talk to the team, but they can't talk to the agent or the player. So when I was at Ford Field last Saturday, I got to meet Mr. Boom Boom Jake Bates. Got some autographs. He was super cool. Got to watch all the kicks last week. And I asked him straight up. I said, so when are you going to sign that contract with the Lions? And he had the only reply that he was allowed to give. I'm very happy kicking for the Michigan Panthers. That's all he could say. He had to give the PR, I'm looking forward to any future opportunities, but for now, I'm happy kicking for the Panthers. That was basically how he said it.
So in a nutshell, we've wanted to obviously talk about, Jake Bates and the opportunity. I mean, I reached out to some media guys over in Detroit. So if there was anything happening yet, and of course we didn't know all the rules to the contracts, and now we do that. It was kind of unknown, but unknown. You can't talk to them until after their season's done. Well, we felt that was just, you couldn't sign a contract, obviously, till the season done. But no, you can't even talk to the players or the agents until the season is over. You can talk to the team, but the teams are focused on winning their games and, keeping their guys. One of the coaches had said that, these guys are like my kids and, you want to look out for your kids as best as you can. And I want to see them all make, an opportunity in the NFL. That's not going to happen for all of them, but some of them, it potentially will. So it's not that they don't want them to take that leap and to take that next step forward. It's just they're prohibited from doing anything right now until, June, mid-June, whenever the season ends. And look, Jake Bates is going to be on, in a lot of conversations. He's going to have a lot of people, a lot of teams that are going to want his services. It is not often that you have a guy kicking back-to-back 60-plus yard field goals. It's the first time it's been done in a very, very long time. I think if the record serves me right, it was more than 30 years. I think that back 60-yard field goals and back-to-back weeks were kicked. So incredible leg, man. I want to become a Detroit Lion, have an opportunity, but we're just going to have to wait.
Well, it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. So he could go on to kick the longest field goal, even in NFL or UFL history during the season. And he could go on to be, 20 out of 20 and hit every kick. Or on the other hand, it could get to his head and he could go 8 out of 10 and miss a couple field goals and miss a bunch of extra points and look crappy on kickoffs. You never know, how the pressure is going to go. So yeah, I think it's kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. And he did a little interview before the game with the UFL, and he happened to be kicking field goals while he did it, and he donked one off the crossbar. And he said, all this attention on me is really great and all, but I really wish more of the attention was on my teammates and all these other guys that really deserve another shot at the NFL. Because a lot of them had already played in the NFL.
Hey, do us a favor real quick. Check your connections if you can. You're breaking up like quite a bit. We're getting like every other word. I'm going to move on to the next segment here. So Lions projected as of yesterday, Lions are projected to add a first round wide receiver. And there's been a lot of talk about this last 6 weeks or so that the Lions should take a wide receiver early, obviously with the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract extension that is looming over everybody's heads right now and wondering what's going to happen, even with the Jared Goff extension. Is it going to happen? Does that prevent the Lions from grabbing a wide receiver in the first round? I don't think so. Even if they lock up St. Brown for a while, I don't believe that that's going to prohibit them from wanting to make their roster deeper and better. At the same time, do they need to take a wide receiver in the first round is the question that I think everyone's trying to answer. And according to Mel Kiper, the Detroit Lions have one of the most complete rosters in the NFL. And for that reason, Mel Kiper predicted the Lions to add to an area of strength in his new mock draft with the Texas wideout, Adonai Mitchell. I'm not so sure that Adonai Mitchell's the right fit. Could be. Obviously, the kid's blazing fast, 4.34, 40-yard dash, and 6'2", so he's got decent size. I think a lot of us are wanting to see that big body wide receiver join the Detroit Lions. We've been missing that type of a playmaker for a long time. Adonai Mitchell could be that guy. I just don't know if he's such a great fit, but he was quoted as saying at 6'2", Mitchell ran a 4.34 42nd at the combine, showing off impressive physical tools. He had 11 touchdowns last season. You might consider this a luxury pick, but this roster is so talented that the Lions can afford to take Mitchell. So, Eric, I mean, how do you feel about the Lions having, an extremely solid roster? According to many analysts, the Lions are one of the most deep and talented rosters in the league. How do you feel about them taking luxury picks versus addressing a need, which we know Brad Holmes, according to him, doesn't do, versus best player available? I think that there's a defining difference between all three. I think a luxury pick is somebody that that you don't necessarily need to have, but you want to have. And then best player available is just that. I mean, it's the best player on your board that's available at that time. So how would you feel about the Lions taking luxury picks and adding a high-flying wide receiver in the first round?
Well, last year, I believe that Brad Holmes took a luxury pick, Broderick Martin.
Oh, no. He's definitely not a luxury pick.
Yeah. I think he was, because he was somebody that you knew could not come in and play right away.
Yeah, I think that was more of a depth pick, but luxury pick to me was Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
That was a luxury pick.
Yeah. Well, everybody thought so at first anyway, with Gibbs. But yeah, personally, I would rather them not take a wide receiver in the first round. I want to see a defensive end or a corner. I really want Kool-Aid. That's who I want. I'm a Kool-Aid fan. But if he does it, I have no problem with it, But I would rather them take the best corner or defensive end or defensive player, period, available, and then later on take someone in the second, third, fourth round, a Brendan Rice, or I don't know how far down Legette's going to fall, or one of these other guys, because someone is going to fall. Not all of these guys can be taken in the first round. Someone's going to fall. And I don't think there's going to be a giant run on wide receivers like there has been in the past.
I think we're going to see probably 4 go in the first round. If my numbers are right, I think that there could be 4. At this rate, though, I mean, I would tend to agree that you don't necessarily have to add a wide receiver in the first round. But then again, to your point, if somebody falls, if Brian Thomas Jr. is available, if Malik Neighbors, even though he doesn't fit the big body, that I'm looking for, is there, I don't know how you could pass up an opportunity. And the more mock drafts that we do, and the more that they keep coming out, I think that we're seeing a trend that up to 7 offensive linemen might go in this first round, and up to 5 quarterbacks could go in this first round. That's 12 picks out of the first 29. That means that the Lions only have to weed through 17 picks to get their next playmaker. And that leaves the door wide open, in my opinion, for what can happen in this draft. We might see some players fall, again, to your point, slip, that we don't expect. And that's because more offensive linemen, potentially more wide receivers could be taken. And for that reason, we might see a luxury pick. We could see that someone falls that Brad really loves, may not fit anything that he's ever done in the past, and he might grab him. At pick 61, Mel Kiper had the Lions taking Penn State defensive end Adisa Isaac. So that becomes the question. Isaac was overshadowed by Chop Robinson. And according to, I'll read you Mel Kiper's statement. He says, Isaac was overshadowed a bit by Chop Robinson, but he actually outproduced his teammate last season, racking up 7.5 sacks. He's not as explosive as Robinson, but he's a well-rounded defender who has an impressive get off at the snap. So this is that age-old conversation, right? Do you want the guy that's produced the most stats, or do you want the guy that probably has better technique, can produce, more stats if needed, but maybe wasn't asked to do as much because now Chop Robinson was the guy that they were using primarily in pass rushing situations? He's going to get the stats. Just because you don't get the stats doesn't mean you're not a producer. You're producing in other ways. Yeah. It's the hive defense that I speak to, where, you want as many guys that can produce to corral the ball carrier, push the ball into a zone where you have coverage. And that's kind of what happened with Penn State last year. Is they were utilizing the 2 edge rushers in a way that they were kind of funneling the ball to one side or the other, and it's primarily Chop Robinson getting the opportunities, but Adisa Isaac is the one that finished. So I kind of like it. I kind of like Adisa Isaac as the second pick, which leaves the first pick wide open. But I'd have to say, wide receiver might be a little much for me in the first round. I'd rather see him take an extremely good, right tackle. And I know we don't need to cover Penei Sewell, but it's not the reason why. It's, you take a right tackle, you turn him into a right guard, a left guard for backup. You've got that swing tackle now that can play tackle positions, someone that you can develop. And there's some extremely good tackles in this draft. It's pretty deep, but I would love to see an offensive tackle, in the first round, or a defensive end. Of course, I think that wide receiver, to your point, available second, third round even, makes more sense. What do you got to say to that?
Oh, I totally agree. And with what you were saying about the 2 Penn State players, numbers versus production, that's the type of guy Brad Holmes goes for. The one we're not seeing, the one that comes out of left field, and we're like, why did he pick him? And because of their numbers or their production. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit. The thing that would surprise me is if Brad Holmes went with, we have an ultra competitive roster and we don't need very much. We only need 1 or 2 players. So you know what? We're going to package 7, 4, and 3, and we're moving up, and we're going to go get Dallas Turner or someone like that. Get the best defensive end that they can possibly get in the draft. That would be, that's me being selfish, but that something like that would be I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility with good old Brad.
So Bucky just brought up a point. He wanted to talk about Brock Bowers. So let's talk about Brock Bowers for a moment. Bucky says, Will, have we had the Brock Bowers convo on the pod? I think we've spoken about it sparingly. He said the Lions led the league in 2 tight end sets last year. Laporta and Bowers keep Skip and Decker from having to report. That's a good point. We would have won in Dallas, just saying. So, I mean, I like where you're going with the fact of having, the 2 tight end sets. To be honest with you, the Lions use 12 personnel often, very often, even 22 personnel last season. And those are probably two of my favorite sets when you're involving the tight ends, utilizing the play action. The running back is so dynamic with Jahmyr Gibbs. He can do just about anything out of the backfield. We didn't see as much as, the passing out of the backfield as I thought that we expected. I thought he would have at least had 400 yards, maybe 500 yards last season, a lot more touches, in the passing game, utilizing his speed on the outside and in the slot. So to your point, though, but by adding Bowers, it would allow the Lions to utilize 12 personnel groupings without the opponent being able to really scheme against the Detroit run game. And, the Detroit is really built its identity around run-oriented attack with two strong running backs. But Bowers' abilities as a pass catcher would force the defense to really have to stay aware. And that's a partial quote by Boer here on heavy.com. So I agree with that. I agree that, adding a tight end is a very good option for the Lions in this draft. I just don't know about Brock Bowers. I really like, a Theo Johnson a little bit later. If Tavion or Javion, whatever his name is, I can't remember his first name there. If he slips to the second round and you are able to add another second round pick somehow, I wouldn't be mad at it. As long as they're addressing the defensive end, as long as they're addressing the cornerback situation, we definitely need a wide receiver. But if you bring in another pass catching tight end, to your point, yes, it would be unlimited offense, unlimited, because you can never scheme against two pass catching tight ends in this league. You can't. It's really never been done. If you have two pass catching tight ends that are really good, sky's the limit for what you can do in Ben Johnson's offense. And I think we've seen enough by Ben Johnson to know that he's going to utilize those guys in the best way possible. What do you think about adding a tight end early, Eric? How do you feel about that?
Okay, so imagine we're at Ford Field. It's day one of the draft. We're at the draft party at Ford Field, which we're going to be. And you hear over the announcement, with the first pick in the NFL draft, the Detroit Lions pick tight end Brock Bowers. People's heads are going to explode. After the Lions taking Ebron and taking Hutchinson and taking Sam Laporta, people would go insane at the time thinking, wow, we're taking another tight end again. My only question is this: I don't know that kid very, very well. So can he block and can he catch the rock?
Oh, he can
is
definitely
he
catch
anywhere
the rock.
near where Sam Laporta is? Yeah.
Yeah, so Brock Bowers, he has been pegged to be like Sam Laporta number 2. And,
really?
We know that Sam Laporta obviously is a pass catching tight end, but he worked on his blocking game, incredibly well last season. I think he did pretty good in his blocking, run support. I think he did a great job. But a pass catcher is what Sam Laporta is. I mean, the guy just finds open space and he makes plays happen. Brock Bowers has been pegged as another one of those. When I watch his tape, I'm not as excited, but when you compare Sam Laporta's last year to Brock Bowers, I will tell you that Brock pops off the page more than a Sam Laporta did at that level. What transition happened with Sam Laporta between college and the NFL, I will never understand, because it's a totally different dude. I mean, Sam at Iowa, he was incredible. The guy played out of his mind. But there's a difference when you look at the tape from what Sam did in his last year at Iowa to what Brock is doing in his last season. So I would encourage everybody to kind of watch them side by side and just take a look at it and why they're claiming that Brock Bowers is such a high draft pick. I think Sam Laporta has something to do with it. I think tight ends were kind of forgotten about a little bit, and then Sam pops off the charts last year and people are like, oh yeah, there is some good tight ends out there. They still do exist. Maybe we should add one. And I think that Brock is getting a lot of airplay because of it. No shade at Brock at all. The guy's an incredible athlete. I just wonder is he really that good that he would promote you taking a tight end in the first round versus adding, pretty solid tight end in the second or third round, in my opinion, would make more sense. But hey, This is Brad Holmes we're talking about. If he loves Brock Bowers and Brock Bowers is there, I wouldn't be mad at it, because there's one thing that we do know for sure. Super Bowls are not won by defense anymore. They haven't been.
No.
I mean, you could say this last Super Bowl was more won by the defense, the way that the Chiefs, were able to do their thing there in the last half. But last 15, 20 years, man, it's been offense driven. And I've been on record telling, or saying that Brad Holmes has developed the offense first, knowing you're going to have more success with an offense than you are a defense. Defense is supposed to be easier. I think that they just haven't hit the mark on the defensive players they brought in. And they're still trying to make up for some of those losses with the second round picks that we've had. And the offense has kind of led the way. And I think that that's what you're going to see from a lot of teams is build the trenches, build your offense first. And that's what wins Super Bowls now. You just have to have a top 15 defense, to really win at the end of the day. And we were close, man. We were top 19, top 18. We were close. I do believe that those few points that we were missing in talent cost us in the end. But, it is what it is. So if Brock Bowers is there at 29, you think that we're going to melt down, fans are going to be upset. And that's the last thing I'll say. Brad Holmes does not care what we think. He doesn't care.
People's faces would melt at Ford Field if we took a tight end. So here's a question for you, Will. If we get to 29 and the absolute your favorite wide receiver that would be there, not Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm talking like, let's say Leggett, one of your favorite at 29, and Brock Bowers are both available. Which one would you take personally? A tight end or a wide receiver?
Give me the two names one more time, because you broke up just a little bit there.
Let's say Leggett. Okay, let's say Leggett and Bowers are both available at 29. Which one would you take?
All right, so if the question is if my favorite wide receiver that I've projected the highest, and then my favorite tight end that I've projected the highest, regardless of the name, wide receiver all day, twice on Sunday, has to be.
Yep.
I love the option of having two tight ends. I mean, I think that now that we've locked up Brock Wright for 3 seasons, does it really make sense to add a tight end that early? I don't know. I just don't see Brock Wright ever becoming a pass catching tight end. I think he's a blocker, and that's about it. You know that when he's in the game, that's what you're going to get. He breaks out here, there, very sparingly with a nice 25-yard catch. But that's, the exception, not the rule. If you want to be explosive on offense and really limit what the defense can scheme to, then bringing in another pass catching tight end, this offense is unstoppable. Having another wide receiver that can elevate the game and get north above the DBs, stretch the field a little bit, work the boundary. This offense is still unstoppable. It's also providing depth behind your number one in case Amon-Ra does go down. You do need another number one. Who right now is going to step up behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, other than we've got Jamison Williams, who's unproven at this point. I know that that's not a very, sexy take to have, but he's unproven at this point. We need to see more from him, more consistency from him. And then, it'll show us what he has at least. But right now, I don't think that we could trust J-Mo to step into wide receiver one role and expect that we're going to win games. And I know, again, that's not a very sexy, take to have, but it is what it is. I mean, the proof is in the tape. J-Mo really worked his butt off last year, started to really show some promise at the end of the season, had a phenomenal NFC title game, getting us rolling, at least in the beginning. I just need to see more. I need to see more consistency. So behind him, who else do we have? Khalif Raymond. Antoine Green, 7th round pick last year, hasn't done anything. Who am I missing? Who am I missing?
I think that's everybody.
No, there's 6 receivers there. There's more on the depth chart, but hold on here. got Williams, Antoine Green, Dries Fountain, which obviously we don't know much about him at the moment. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I forgot, DPJ. So DPJ, I would trust DPJ over Williams right now. And then you got Traquan Smith, who was brought in to be the Reynolds replacement, prior to Reynolds departing, similar size and athletic ability. So we really don't have another true number one. And I think that's why maybe Mel Kiper's looking at it like the Lions need another number one in case the number one goes down. And that does make sense. But could you do that with a tight end? You could, but it's not the same. You don't have a 4-3 guy bursting out of the tight end slot versus, Adonai Mitchell, to his point, 4-3 guy taking off on the outside. Speed is speed, man. Speed hurts in the NFL. It hurts you. And if they add more speed, I wouldn't be surprised. So I guess to answer your question, I'd rather see a wide receiver go before a tight end. I think you can add a tight end later. Absolutely. Next up on the podcast this morning, Terrion Arnold. So the Lions, we know, had a pro day 2 days ago now, and they brought in quite a few players. Matter of fact, a few big names that we've been expecting to be high on the Lions list. They brought in, and they brought in a few, unknown players, of course, maybe some later round picks. But there's a couple of big names that came to Detroit the other day. Darius Robinson being number one. Roman Wilson, wide receiver, Michigan. Mike Sainristil, Michigan. There were 6 Michigan guys in attendance. So big presence from U of M on the local pro day pajama party, if you will. But at the end of the day, I don't see a lot of big names in here that are going to go in the first or second round other than Darius Robinson or Aruk Aroro. So 2 of the bigger defensive ends, bigger names that I feel are, definitely first, second round talents. Aruk Aroro is obviously more of a second round talent. But Terrion Arnold obviously couldn't be at this pro day because he wasn't a local guy. So the Lions brought him in yesterday. And let me pull up the article here. So this article by, who wrote it? Kyle Minicky of MLive said the Detroit Lions have hit on some defensive backs in the last year. They've also whiffed on a few too, leading to some issues in their past defense last season, and more needs heading into the next one. So what he's trying to say there is obviously the Cam Sutton thing kind of blew up in our face, and the Lions have some big needs still in the defensive back room. Obviously, safety and cornerback is still a big need, at least in my opinion. I know that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have differing opinions right now, but we've seen them, still working to add more players. So yesterday they hosted cornerback Terrion Arnold from Alabama. We know that Brad Holmes likes these Alabama guys. Bringing in a guy like Terrion Arnold tells me that you have the possibility of moving up in this draft. Because I don't think that there's anybody in the world that believes Terrion Arnold is going to slip to 29. Do you think that he would slip to 29?
Terrion Arnold? No way. None. Zero zilch. Yeah, no. He's, in my opinion, top 15.
So why would they bring in a Terrion Arnold if they don't think that he's going to slip? I think the answer is clear, that the Lions are looking to make moves. And if they really want to bring in a high valued prospect, somebody that can be a game changer day one, you have to move up. So are the Lions considering moving up into the top 15, 18, 20 of this draft? On my last mock draft, I had the Lions moving up just ahead of the Minnesota Vikings at pick 22 with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that that's a great possibility. Even moving up, as little as 7 slots could net you Terrion Arnold. It could. There is that possibility. It could also net you Jared Verse. It could definitely net you Darius Robinson, unless somebody really likes him early. So, according to this article anyway, the Alabama All-American Terrion Arnold was at Allen Park on Wednesday, and he posted a lot of photos to his Instagram story. He had a sensational season last year. in Alabama, leading the SEC in both passes defended, 17, interceptions with 5. And it was his first full season in the starting lineup. He allowed a passer rating of 50.7, which is incredibly low. So he did an excellent job. Now, the only thing that worries me a little is that it was his first full season. And we've been seeing this more and more where one guy or, 1 year, a guy gets a full opportunity to play and he has a breakout season. And now he's on everybody's board extremely high. The one question I have maybe for you, Eric, is, when we look at consistency and we look at, a player that, does it over and over and over, repeat, got the broken record on repeat. You don't see that with one season. I think it requires at least 2 seasons. Would it make you nervous that, you're bringing in guys? So Aiden Hutchinson's an example, right? He didn't do anything his first 3 seasons at U of M, and then he had a crazy breakout last season. So far, he's been pretty good in the NFL. I mean, pretty darn good. He's had a pretty good, couple of seasons. Not elite yet, but he's done pretty darn good. So would you accept that kind of talent from a Terrion Arnold or anybody else that is only posted 1 full season? Are you expecting the world out of them? Are you expecting them to have to, work a little bit harder than the other guys? I mean, what do you think about it? What do you think about only 1 season of production?
I think it's fine as long as Brad has really done his homework. And he does. He really does his homework on guys. So just like Sam Laporta, he had a pretty decent year and then comes in and nobody saw that coming. Not from what he put out in college, and I have to wonder, is the Lions roster good enough that Brad can mortgage some of these other picks? And let's say we only take 4 players in the entire draft versus 7 or 8 like we normally do. Get that much better talent, but you're getting less players. We have less positions of need now. And taking a corner like that, I think, would be perfect. Or
yeah, I mean, I'm on board with. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, or do you stick where you are and take somebody like Kool-Aid? So, who's going to be the better pro for what you would have to give up? Terrion Arnold at say 14, or Kool-Aid at 29? Who's the better value?
Well, I mean, obviously Kool-Aid at 29 would be a better value, but here's the thing that I like about both of those guys, but especially Terrion Arnold, is when I read this quote. He said, in 2022, my redshirt freshman year, after we played Tennessee, I got benched. And I've been telling NFL teams that right there, it changed everything for me. I like to say I had my Michael Jordan moment. I write it down every day. Remember that. Who does that remind you of? I'll ask you again. I write it down every day. Eli Ricks, that's my brother. But I mean, when I got benched and replaced by him, it motivated me. I write it down every day. And I refuse to ever let that happen again. That's why I love players like Terrion Arnold, because you can hear it. You can read it, you can see it. It's all over him. Like he said, that changed his life. He got benched. He's too good for that. He knows that. So he worked that much harder to stay above it, to not let it happen again. The writing it down every day, who's that remind you of?
Man, you're making me start to lean towards Arnold versus Kool-Aid now. You're changing my mind, Will. St. Brown all the way, Oh, man, I love that mentality.
Yeah. That's the kind of players that Brad Holmes looks for, is the guys that take this stuff personally. It's not just a game to them anymore. It's not just, they're out there playing on Saturdays for the fun of it, which is all part of it. I mean, they still want the guys that love football. I mean, but this takes it to a different level. When it became personal, that's when things start to go right for you. When you make it a habit every day of, I'm not going to let this happen to me again. I am not going to let somebody else beat me. So if I've got to watch more tape, I got to get in the film room more often. I got to hit the weights more often. I got to get out there early to practice. I got to stay late. I've got to ask more questions. Whatever the case may be, whatever the player has to do to never let that happen again, those are the chips that are firmly placed upon shoulders that do well in the NFL. So when I read this quote, I'm like, yep, I see it now. I see why, this is a Brad Holmes guy, and I am not afraid if Brad Holmes moves up to grab somebody like a Terrion Arnold just by reading that quote. Now, that's part of it. Still got to look at the tape, but his tape's pretty darn good. And this is an Alabama defense. I mean, when you had Brian Branch that was on that team, played with these guys, played with Kool-Aid McKinstry. When Brian Branch was there, Jamison Williams was there. So all of these guys have had it. I mean, I don't know if Kool-Aid had or Terrion Arnold had a chance to practice against Jamison. They might have. Don't quote me on that. I think that they did. But when you have that type of, high level acumen as far as players that are on your team that are able to practice against each other, that's why Brad Holmes likes these schools. You've got amazing talent that is able to practice against each other and then go out and play the incredible talented teams that they play in their conference. So having athletic ability like Terrion Arnold, let's see, he posted a RAS score of 9.25, which ranked 182 out of 2,422 corners who went through the draft process since 1987. That's a long time, man. That's 37 years of corners, and he's 190 or 182nd. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So the only one that hasn't been brought in yet, to my knowledge, is Quinion Mitchell. And the last thing I'll say about Terrion Arnold is, look, we know one thing is true. When you look at the top 30 visits, when you look at the combine visits, when you look at the pro day visits, and then you go look at who the Lions have drafted, it's typically about 90% of the guys on those visits is who gets drafted. So there's going to be 4 or 5 guys that have already been, in Detroit visiting with Detroit or at the combine or wherever that are going to end up a Detroit Lion this year. We just have to figure out who. And how they fall to the Lions if that's what we need to have happen. But to your point too, Kool-Aid McKinstry and the value, at 29, it's there. Kool-Aid, man, he's another guy that talks about the same thing. His energy, his focus, just loving football. He's a very, cool, calm, collected kid. Speaks well. You can tell that he's passionate. I love his energy. I think that Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to have an excellent career in the NFL, no matter who he ends up with. But I still would love to see him be part of the Detroit Lions without a doubt. Oh,
for sure. Could you imagine all the people with the Kool-Aid jerseys? Oh, God. Now, did you see the article that came out yesterday, I believe, about Kool-Aid? He had surgery on his foot and that he's healing really well and he's right on schedule. So he'll be ready for training camp and good to go.
Yeah, so the thing about the injury, it's just a minor surgery. So it's about a 4-week recovery time. Really not a whole lot to it. He said that in his interview yesterday that he was having surgery like right after the interview or the next day or whatever it was. And he'll be back in about 4 weeks. So that puts him where? Mid-May. So he should be almost ready for, some OTAs, depending on what team, he ends up on. Next up, we've got Jared Goff podcast visit. So I spoke about this a little bit last night, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about, some of the things that were brought up in this podcast. I thought it was an incredibly well done podcast, the questions that they asked. Now, they know Jared Goff a little bit differently than most because these guys went to Cal with Jared Goff. And one of them is a really good friend of Jared Goff's for many years and had an opportunity to finally, interview Jared for the second time. And it was excellent podcast. I put the link in last night's show. I'll repost it into this show too, so you guys can take a look at it. I would encourage you to watch it. There's a lot of great conversation in there that really speaks highly of who Jared Goff is and what he's gone through and what he's battled. I won't go deep off into, all the mushy gushy stuff that I went into last night. It seemed like it was, pretty powerful stuff, but not so much sports related, but yet it does relate to sports. But he stressed Dan Campbell's leadership and how incredible Dan Campbell is as a leader. And I did not take this at all that this is just your player speaking about your coach and saying all the right things because that's what they're supposed to do. I don't take that from Jared Goff at all. I think that he genuinely feels that Dan Campbell is probably obviously the best coach that he's been around, at the pro level. But somebody that is highly regarded as, uber professional, does everything the right way, leads by example, but leads you in a different way too. And it's all of those things that are different about Dan Campbell that are so raw and so real and authentic and genuine that you don't get with everybody you meet, everybody that you know. It's really hard to find good quality people like that are so genuine with everything that they do. It almost feels like you probably have known them forever. And Jared Goff stressed that the leadership that Dan exudes changed him. That Dan basically forced him to sink or swim, to either thrive or fail. And in developing Jared Goff's leadership started when he was canned from the Rams and started working on himself and the process of working on himself and then meeting Dan and how it just kind of took off from there. And it's been a 3-year process of learning how to lead and be more of a vocal leader in Detroit, but taking the opportunity to wrap his arms around Detroit and kind of figure Detroit out a little bit and become more of a vocal leader, but not just a leader by example, which he is, but somebody that can actually use his voice now to help this team win. And that's what we saw last year. Jared finally broke out of his shell a little bit. I think he's always been, viewed as, maybe a little bit more reserved, a little bit more quiet, but not last year. Totally different Jared Goff. And that podcast really did a good job at speaking to it. But Eric, tell me, what have you noticed about Jared Goff's growth, from 22 to 23, this last season, obviously? What have you noticed? What would stand out to you?
To me, he's got the dog in him now.
Yeah.
He's got that, you're not going to mess with me no more. I'm tired of getting pushed around. And I think he's more of a leader now. You see him directing traffic and telling people where to go and what to do. And he was a little more reserved before. Even when he did interviews and stuff, he was very laid back and meek. And now he's a little more take control and forward. So it's nice to see him taking the reins a bit.
Yeah, he's definitely he's a no BS guy, but he still does it in this way of, I don't know how to put it, but it's almost like it's so cool, calm, and collected. Like, I guess, for instance, the thing that I spoke to last night, they are the NFC Championship media, media days, right? Media availability. And there was a longtime beat writer for the Lions that was more or less questioning the Lions' quality of players versus the 49ers. And Jared just kind of side-eyed the guy, just kind of looked at him like, okay, and what about our guys? Did you forget about our guys? We've got this guy, this guy, this guy, this all pro, that all pro, talking about Penei Sewell, Monroe St. Brown, and the rest, Taylor Decker, all of them. And so, he's leading, right? He's standing up for his guys. He's sticking up for his team, but he didn't do it in a loud, abrasive, obnoxious way. He just did it the Jared way, which is this cool, calm, collected, composed poised individual. And that's what I think is spilling over onto the field, is we're seeing that same poise of Jared Goff now spilling over to the field, where it doesn't matter what kind of pressure is thrown at him. It doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't matter what interception he just threw. It doesn't bother him. It doesn't bother him what the fans are saying. It doesn't bother him what's happening in the crowd. He goes out and does his job, and he has the mindset that he's going to go out and win. He has the mindset that he's going to go out and throw a touchdown pass on the next possession. No, he doesn't care if he just threw 3 interceptions. He's still going to go win the game. That's what you need for a leader, because if your leader gets bent and can't get out of their own head, that's how you lose games. And Jared's not like that. He's somebody that just shrugs it all off. And I don't think he does it in a way that's detrimental to the team. I think he uses it as strength, but he doesn't outwardly show any panic. And if he can stay that cool, calm, and collected on the sideline, that keeps everybody else around him intact and ready to roll. So.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he's starting to get really, really good without being arrogant.
Yeah.
Or coming off as overly cocky, because that was the thing that I hated about, I hate to say it, Aaron Rodgers. I just couldn't stand how arrogant and cocky he was. Yes, he was good, but he didn't have to be arrogant and cocky. That's what I like about Goff. He's the exact opposite when it comes to that. And I'm telling you right now, Goff has turned into, over these last 3 seasons, one, if not my favorite Lions players of all time, just because of his attitude and his never give up. And look how horribly he played the first part of the first season. You know, everybody was dropping passes. He was throwing errant balls. Everybody was on the wrong page. You know, like he said in the interview yesterday, what did they go? 0-10-1 to start? You know, that's a lot to come over. That's a lot through your brain. Hey, you know, to see the other side of it. We can win. We know we can do it. We're this close every week. And then they get to that Minnesota game. Oh, something fell. We get to the Minnesota game, and all of a sudden you throw that ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown and you win the game. And it's just like a light switch clicked, and they knew they could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you brought up, one of your favorite Lions players to do it, and you had a good topic this morning that you wanted to talk about. And I'm going to come back to some more stuff on Jared Goff here in a minute, talking about the negative media stuff. But you brought up a Mount Rushmore of Lions players. So explain what you're looking for from Lions fans, in building this Mount Rushmore of Lions players. Is it past? Is it present? Is it a culmination of both? What are you looking for here?
Yeah, so it would be, who are basically your 4 favorite Lions players of all time? Could be current, could be the past. Doesn't have to be the best player at their position ever, but your personal favorite. So if I had 4 spots to pick and I could only fill 4 spots, most people are just going to pick the 4 that they can remember off the top of their head that they think were the best to ever do it. Okay. Mine might be just a little slightly different, my Mount Rushmore. So there's a lot of different people you could pick from. And my very first one I'm going to pick is Jared Goff. He took us from nothing. He took us from nothing and brought us 32 years later to our first playoff win, where I sat in the stands and had tears running down my face afterward, to the next week doing it again, to the next week bringing us within 3 points of going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Man.
No one else did that. No one else. Eric Kramer won us 1 playoff game. He won us 2 and almost a third in 3 seasons, Stafford was here for what?
12
10,
seasons.
12 seasons, made the playoffs 4 or 5 times. Never, the closest was the Dallas game with the picked up flag, and even if that flag didn't get picked up, we still needed some help to win that game. So I guess my number one would be, yes, Jared Goff. My number two, you have to put Barry up there because, all the games I went to at the Silverdome and not Ford Field, but all the games I went to at the Silverdome with Barry. And, I used to go to training camp back when it was down in Saginaw. And I was there the day that Bobby Ross had to get on the mic and tell everybody, oh, Barry's not coming today. He's not going to be here. And then I have a surprise one for everyone. That isn't Barry Sanders, that isn't Calvin Johnson, that isn't Matt Stafford. It's Jason Hanson, Mr. Reliable. For over half my lifetime, the Lions had the exact same kicker, and he was always good. He was great from 50 yards. I loved him. I loved number 4. And I don't know how they haven't retired his jersey. I don't know how he hasn't made it into the Hall of Fame. I know it's really hard for a kicker. But if any ex-Lion deserves it, I think it's him. And so I have Jason Hanson, Jared Goff, Barry Sanders. And then my fourth one would probably have to be Matt Stafford, because he was here for 12 years and put in so much. And that guy laid everything on the line. And, this first couple of seasons, everybody called him a China doll. But I don't think he was much of a China doll. That first season, he got hurt. But if you remember watching that Browns game, when he got hit on that play where he ran around and he was mic'd up, that play right there made me a Matt Stafford fan, And it did feel kind of wrong rooting against him in the playoffs, but I had to do it. And my loyalty lies with the Lions, not with any one player. So when the Rams went to the Super Bowl with Stafford, of course I rooted for the Rams, but I was rooting for Stafford. I wasn't rooting for the Rams to go to the Super Bowl. So it was kind of neat to see. So I really want to see Goff get his Super Bowl now. And then that would cement him as one of the best ever to do it.
So you had what? Stafford, Goff, Barry, and Hanson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your camera is
kind of a goofy.
Your camera is wandering again.
Damn it. I got to figure out why that's doing that.
Hanson was elected again. Was it last year? He was not elected, nominated for the Hall of Fame. I don't think that he was elected. And I think he was added to the College Hall of Fame in 2019 or 2020. I don't know. I did a story on him last year. I can't remember all the details, but I mean, he's been close. He definitely deserves to be entered into this Hall of Fame. I mean, I think it's god awful that he hasn't made it. I mean, I know kickers, it's tough, but I think that there definitely should be some rules. And I know I bring up a lot of rule ideas, but look, there has to be, the best kicker every decade, or every 5 years or whatever it is, that needs to enter into the Hall of Fame. I think that it has to be done. There's nobody else that's done it better than Jason Hanson. I mean, he was the leading point scorer for the Lions for like 20 years. I think he still holds the most points. I'd have to go back and look, but so it's interesting. Goff, Stafford, Hanson, and Barry Sanders. So if I were to do mine, obviously it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, number one is Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Number one is Barry Sanders. I mean, he has to be. He has to be. He's the guy that electrified my youth. He's the player that I wanted to watch every Sunday. When I could remember, as a young child, what football really was. Barry always came to mind. I mean, he's what everybody was talking about. To do it for 10 seasons with 1,000 yards in every season, it's never been done. It'll never be done again.
Yep.
But there's a couple of other guys that I think helped frame and change Detroit Lions football, or the position, at the time that maybe the position wasn't what it is today. And that's Charlie Sanders, tight end. So Charlie, even though he played before my time, did a story on him last year. He completely revolutionized the tight end position. And Hall of Famer, of course, gave a lot back to the community, even on, his deathbed. I mean, he was always worried about the community. So he's not somebody that makes my Mount Rushmore just because of his play on the field. It's the play off the field and what he brought to the Detroit community. I believe his community in North Carolina, if memory serves me correct, he did a lot. He did a lot to bring heart awareness to the forefront of youth sports. And for that reason, he's got to be on my Mount Rushmore. I mean, just the way that, he really changed the tight end position too. So Barry Sanders, Charlie Sanders. The newer guys, it's kind of tough because their career is not over yet. I would put Jared Goff in the conversation, but because he's still playing, I'm going to leave him off for now, but he's definitely going to be there. It's just I need to see him get through a couple more seasons. But let's just say his career in Detroit ended after this season. Jared Goff, of course, would be up there because, to your point, Stafford was with us, 12 seasons. He went to 3 different playoffs, never won a game. Stafford Goff does it in 3 seasons, wins 2. Almost brings us to a Super Bowl. Clearly the best quarterback we've had for a long time. Very, very long time. He may not have all the shiniest stats. He may not have 50,000 yards passing and all of that stuff, but you give him some time in Detroit, he will. I mean, he chucks 4,000 yards a season with ease. So my next guy, because of the way that he's helped revolutionize this team and where the new Lions are going and just how good he was as a linebacker, Chris Spielman has got to be on my Mount Rushmore. Has to be. Yep. Has to be. The last one's kind of tough because as much as I want to put Calvin Johnson on there for the way that he played the game, I think that a lot of people would. I really do. I think that a lot of people would. I don't know if I can put him on. Because, again, I've got to go back to, he's a Hall of Famer. So, yeah, he deserves it. But Jason Hanson obviously is right there with him, in my opinion, because of the way that he, helped revolutionize this team a little bit. Kept us winning games, when we had no other way to win, it seems like. I don't think I can leave Calvin off. I think I have to put Calvin on. So Barry Sanders, Charlie Sanders, Chris Spielman, and Calvin Johnson, I think. But, man, only being able to select 4 is a good problem to have, I guess, because there's so many more you could put up there. So Tracy says Bubba Smith, Barry, Evan Smith, Barry, Spielman, St. Brown, Calvin. Who else do we have? Rick says, sitting here just listening, had to comment on that. Thank you, Will. Can't have that without Spielman. Yeah, Spielman's got to be there. Mike P says, Dick LeBeau, Night Train Lane, Bobby Lane, Barry Sanders, Calvin John. He went a little deep on his Mount Rushmore. He's got quite a few players there. Mike P, I don't know how old you are, but the Dick LeBeau and the Night Train, they were on my mind too. Bobby Lane, I would consider it, but just because of the whole curse thing, that ensued, and I just don't think I could. But he was the last one to win a championship for us. So, who else do we have? Did anyone else put one in there? Evan Smoke says Chris Spielman is my all-time favorite football player. His mentality and work ethic are unquestionable. Then he comes back to guide Sheila into rebuilding the franchise. He does it all with humility. He does, man. The guy's rock solid. Mike P, 77 years, so he knows a little bit about Detroit football. Just a little bit.
A little more than us.
So, what's funny is I was looking up images the other day for Chris Spielman, and I don't know where I heard this, but someone had said, when you go back like 15, 20 years or so in the NFL and look at the players, look at the size of the players. Now, I know we talk every year that the players are getting bigger, faster, stronger, right? And I would say that that's true. I think that sports medicine and just the physique of sports, everything has changed. It's getting better. People are getting healthier. There's more science involved now into it to where there wasn't before. It was just pound hard, hard iron and go run. Now it's way different. I mean, you're in cryo machines and you've got all these stickies all over you, pumping energy into your body and impulses and just all kinds of weird stuff, right? So I look back at Chris Spielman's photos. Matter of fact, I should probably find one. This picture just kind of like struck me. Like, wow, like this dude was a maniac, extremely strong. And you don't really see players like that. I mean, he was almost like a Danielle Hunter. When you look at Danielle Hunter, just how ripped he is. That's what Chris Spielman kind of looked like in this picture. I thought I saved it. Maybe I didn't. I'll bring it up on the next show or something because I don't want to waste a ton of time trying to find it. But yeah, this photo of Chris, man, it just struck me like the dude was just absolutely goated. Oh, here's one right here. No, that's not it either.
Lately, I've been watching old Lions games on YouTube, like 95 and 97 and stuff with Barry and Chris Spielman in it and stuff. And I was amazed at the size of the players. The players looked bigger than the players now. And I think it's because they had a little more thickness to them. Everybody's they're muscular, but they're thinner now to be faster.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think back in the 90s, they had a little more fat on them. They were a little thicker, like their necks just looked like stovepipes,
Well, why? I don't know what's changed, but when I look at a lot of players today, I don't see the necks that they used to have. So when I played football, one of the first drills that we would do in warm-ups is the bridge. And you would get back on your neck and you would roll your neck, everywhere to really build, the lats and back, of your muscle of the neck and your shoulders. Because with your hitting, you need a very strong neck muscle to be able to take the impact and not bend your neck backward and suffer an injury. I don't see those same type of neck muscles anymore. Ray Lewis might be one of the last ones that really had an incredibly strong neck. Who else? It was Ray Lewis and somebody else. Ray Rice. Ray Rice had an extremely strong neck. But you go look at Mike Tyson. That's what I'm talking about. You look at Mike Tyson in his prime. Yeah. He constantly did the neck drills. And that's so that he could take a punch and his neck wouldn't, shock back and forth. But anyway, I'll digress off of that. So back to Jared Goff here. And we're going to open up chat questions here in just a few moments. But negative media talk. So Jared Goff mentioned in the podcast yesterday or the other day, I just watched it yesterday, that it appears that, our media has been ingrained in shoveling negativity. And I don't think he meant it in a way that it's always negative, but that maybe we thrive off of negativity. And to his point, he said maybe that's what sells, maybe that's what gets clicks, but the negativity needs to stop to a degree, right? I mean, yeah, we can always be critical. And I know I've talked about this a few times on this podcast, but we've now heard it from multiple players that have left. And now we're hearing it from our quarterback that the negativity in media, it just doesn't need to. That's not how our team is going to feel better about themselves, right? They do see this stuff. They do hear this stuff. And it's not always about just having thick skin as to where, maybe we don't need to always call them an underdog. Like, is our team really underdogs anymore? I don't think that they are. No. So he had this to say. He said, I have this and I need to drop it soon here because I'm going to hopefully be in Detroit for a long time. And I know that sounded weird, but he started talking and then he kind of changed what he was going to talk about. But this is basically what he said. But I have this thing with our local media where they almost relish in negativity at times. And maybe that's what gets clicks and that's what sells, but it's no longer what they need to live in. Hey guys, we have a good team. We've had success. We can be happy about that. We can celebrate that and not have to write about that or not have to write about how we are constantly the underdog. No, teams are going to be gunning for us now. We've won the division. I'm probably overthinking it in my head just because it's the chip on my shoulder and the competitor in me. But in that moment, I was just giving that guy a hard time. So again, he was talking about the beat writer that was really giving Jared a hard time about 49ers having this crazy good roster and the Lions don't, but we do. And so again, what Jared's just saying here is like, we're no longer the underdog. We don't always have to thrive on negative. We have a good team. We have things going in the right direction. How can we try to focus on some of the positive stuff? Because the more you speak positivity, the more it seems to stay positive. I don't know how many people believe in that type of stuff, but it seems like the more things you profess to happen or to wish it, you talk about it, it happens. Not always, but more likely than not, if you're positive things kind of happen. And I think that's what he's trying to speak to here is maybe we're not just, an underdog all the time. Yeah, you'll have the over under, the betting lines, whatever, but don't count this team out. Stop saying that Detroit is, not going to win, or if they lose a game, it's the same old Lions again. It's like, that's just not it. It's just not who we are. So I think Jared wants to see a different message in Detroit. I think that he wants to see the team, kind of elevated, not so much put on a pedestal because we haven't won enough yet. It's only been one season. And a lot of us, or a lot of people that are pessimistic, they'll say, well, you haven't done anything yet. You've only done one. We need to see more. And of course we do. But this is a building block. Like this should be block number one. Let's focus on good energy and giving this team good energy. Eric, what do you got to say to Jared Goff's statement here on the media thriving on negativity?
100%. And the local media, they've had nothing but negative to report for 32 years. So it's ingrained in them to think that, okay, we have one good season. Now the next year it's going to flip. That was a fluke. And we're going to go right back to losing again. They're just waiting for the shoe to drop. It's kind of like Minnesota last year, year before last, they won the division and went to the playoffs. And I saw it as a fan of not the Vikings, that they weren't built for the long haul. This team was going to implode, and you could see it. You could see it was going to happen, at least in my eyes. And I don't see the Lions being built that way now. This is a team. It's not just a bunch of players. This is a team for once, and that's what we've been missing for so long, and that's the point the local media is missing. And that's, I think, why they focus on the negativity so much.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for the shoe to drop.
I see. I could agree with that. I think that but is that a way to live? Like, you're always thinking the worst. I mean, I guess I tend to, when I have to, go through a process of, the good and the bad about a situation, I guess I always err on the side of caution. I kind of make sure that I know what the worst outcome is going to be so that I don't have it. So I guess I get it. I mean, I get that they're trying to, or I guess I get that they're maybe waiting for the other shoe to drop, as you would say, that they don't believe it yet. They don't believe it. They just don't think it's real yet because it was just one season. But has it really been one season? I mean, the Lions halfway through 2022 really haven't lost a whole lot of games.
No, and it's PTSD. It really is. They're just waiting for somebody to fire off a shot at them again.
Yeah,
they're scared. It's more of a scared of it happening again kind of deal, I think. And it's really easy for people to be a keyboard warrior. It's easy for people to fall into the negativity trap and not stay positive. Right. And I talk about that all the time in my business and with my business dealings. And I've talked to you about it before. I'm a very, very positive driven person. And I'm really, really happy to hear Goff saying that he's trying to focus on the positive and ignore the negative. That, oh my God, makes me so happy for this season. So no matter who we draft, doesn't matter. I think our teams can go right now today, go up against anybody, no matter who they draft either.
Yeah, I feel you too, man. I almost feel like Brad Holmes has got this roster in a position where every single pick could be a luxury pick if he really wanted it to be. Of course, we still need, we would all love to add that fourth dynamic piece to the defensive line. But I'm on board with whatever we do, and that's why this draft is so hard for me to figure out, like, what makes sense, because everything makes sense. Like, when you have, great foundational pieces at just about every level, it's hard to figure out what you truly need to get over the hump, whether it's defensive end or cornerback. I think that obviously those would be the best pieces to add right away. So it's after the 9:15, hour here. Questions open up in the chat. If there's anything that, you guys watching this morning would like to chat about, talk about, questions on, start posting it away. We'll grab, one at a time and we'll talk about it. So look, speaking of the draft, we're 2 weeks away today. And it's coming extremely quick. It could be an interesting night. It could be raining in Detroit. We could all be outside for hours and hours and hours. And next thing you know, the Lions don't have a pick in the first round. Has anything changed in the last couple of weeks that would make you really think that the Lions are not going to address the defense with the first pick? That's the question I have for everybody. Has anything changed over the last few weeks that would make you think the Lions are not going to draft defense with the first pick in the 2024 NFL draft?
I don't think anything. No, I don't think anything's changed at all. I have a feeling Brad's known for a little while what he wants to do, but he has to keep all options open about trades and everything else. And if I had to guess, I guess when we pick at 29, his phone is going to blow up because that's the perfect spot. I hate to say it, but it's the perfect spot for someone that's near the top of the second round that wants to move up and get the fifth-year option on Bo Nix or Penix. Yep. They want that fifth-year option on a left tackle or, I don't think a running back, but one of the premier players, and get that fifth-year option just so they can hold that option. And what a bummer it would be to be at Ford Field all night, wait till midnight, we finally get to our pick, and the Lions trade with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right.
or whoever it happens to be, that would be a bummer. Yeah. Oh, well, but I was downtown the other day, and all the stuff they're getting ready for the draft is amazing. The building of the shell, and they have all these flags all over town. And they just put up these giant shoes yesterday, and it's going to be incredible. If everybody can get downtown, go downtown. It's going to be awesome.
Well, it's definitely going to be packed, and it's going to be tough to park. I have a feeling that, it's going to be better to try to Uber into the city and leave your car about 20 miles outside of it, because it's going to be nuts.
Use the people.
Yeah, I truly believe that the Lions are the wild card in this draft again. And I say that because of recent, experience. Last year, the Lions are at 6. They bounce down to 12. They grab a running back that I thought that they were going to take. And then at 18, they grab a linebacker. Everyone's heads just blew off their shoulders. Like, what is going on? Wild card. You just don't know what Brad Holmes is going to do. The previous year, Lions are in the top 10 again. And this time they decided to trade all the way back up to 12 to grab an injured Jameson Williams. Again, people's heads blew off their shoulders. Like, what is going on? You moved all the way up to 12 to grab a receiver when you could have grabbed another defensive end or another defensive tackle or a top tier corner, and they didn't. So Brad Holmes has shown us enough that anything and everything is on the table. One thing is for sure with me, though, and that's you just can't get caught up talking about exactly what the Lions are going to do, because we don't know. We don't exactly know. We don't have a clue. And to be honest, I don't think that they do either. I don't think that the Lions really have a clue what they're going to do. I think that their approach will be different, but it'll be fun. At the end of the day, I think that we should all just want the Lions to draft solid players that can help this team. And that's all we can expect, is that they grab a playmaker that helps this team win. And that's where I think a lot of the negative media starts, is you don't get the player that you wanted. And so people go to Twitter and they go to Facebook and they go here and they go there. And it's like, oh my God, the Lions failed. They didn't grab this player. They didn't trade for this player. Yeah. They didn't get this player. And then it just a whole firestorm starts. And with the media too. And it's because they were wrong and they were butthurt about it, that they were wrong. Look, I got lucky last year. I got really lucky last year. And that's all it was. I never expect that to happen again, because Mel Kiper doesn't get it right. Daniel Jeremiah doesn't get it right. Dan Patrick doesn't get it right. Not one analyst that works for any 3 or 4 letter company gets it right. They get a lot of things right as far as like talking about the team, talking about the needs, what makes sense, and projecting the right kind of player to a team, but not necessarily the player. I think it's fairly easy to kind of pick who the first or second, off the board is going to be, depending on if it's a good quarterback draft or not and a quarterback needy team. But just about nobody gets anything right. So you shouldn't feel bad about it. Just accept the challenge, right? It is what it is. Well, and now we got to see
some of that negativity may come from they all gave Brad Holmes F's and D's and failing grades for his draft. And then he goes into his postseason press conference and is like, check this out. Look what I did. You still giving me an F? Or are you giving me an A now? So he kind of put it back in their face a little bit. He hears the negativity too.
Yeah, I like that little pizzazz of Brad Holmes when he was, kind of, I don't know if you want to call it ego, or maybe he was just cashing in his receipts a little bit to say, look, you guys jumped the gun. 2024's draft, grade me in 2027. Don't grade me in 24 or 25. Grade me in 27 or 26. Because, some of these guys you think are supposed to come in and play year one. I may not even have them on my, starting roster until year 2 or 3. This could be a project. I may be totally fine with Marcus Davenport starting this year and playing out this entire season. And I might grab a Darius Robinson or a Chop Robinson. Now I'm making this all hypothetical. And I have them as the second guy until they're not, or the third guy until they're not. They're not coming in to start. And see, that's the difference with the Lions. They don't care where you draft guys. They just want their guys. And where other teams are saying, oh, I drafted you 10th overall, you have to start. Nope, not on the Lions. I drafted you 29th overall, and you have to earn it. You have to prove it to me that you deserve to start. That's the difference. You don't just get a free pass to start for the Detroit Lions, as where before you did. Could that be the reason why some of those teams didn't work out the greatest? Maybe. What do you think about that, Eric? What do you like about the way that Jared Goff, that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes go about assembling a roster and then, allowing these guys to sit and wait if they have to, or, not start just because of where they were selected?
I think that's the goal of every team, is to make every pick more of a luxury pick where they can sit and season and learn the NFL before they have to be thrown to the wolves. And here's something mind-blowing that I didn't really think about until yesterday when I watched the Jared Goff interview. This is the 4th season, with the same GM and the same head coach and the same quarterback. That has never happened in my lifetime. The same coach, the same quarterback, and the same GM, all thinking the same, all wanting the same product on the field, all drafting with the same mind. And when you see Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes in the draft room, you don't see them arguing over stuff. You see them agreeing on things and doing things in a like mind because they've talked it over beforehand and they know what they want to do. And I just think they have an incredible way of drafting, and it's working, whatever they're doing. It's working awesome.
To take it a little bit further, it's the 4th year with the same defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
This will be the 3rd season with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator, but he's been with the team the entire time.
Yeah.
So
continuity.
The continuity is thick on this team. And I think that, and I've spoken to that in the past. I think we did a whole show on it one time where I went through all of the past coaches. This is the first time since, I believe, was it Swartz? I keep forgetting. Was it Swartz, that had 4 or 5 seasons? Then Caldwell was close. But this is like the first time that we've had the same, like you said, we've had the same coaching staff, ownership, is allowed this team to build and continue to build without that carrot hanging over them. Like, I'm going to yank it. No, I trust my guys. They've got this time to get it done. That's the reason why we gave them, 5 or 6 year contracts, is we want them to have the time to be able to put this team together and then implement the things and execute the things that they are trying to implement. Right. So it speaks volumes. I think that we're going to see yet again another big jump from year over year, whether it's defense or offense. Yeah. I think it's going to be huge.
And how easy would it have been for MCDC to, after 5 or 6 games, pull Jared Goff, try somebody else, but he didn't. He stuck with him because he knew he could be the guy, not just a guy, the guy. And for them to have that faith and go through that adversity, I think that's what's helping put them where they are as well as the continuity.
So to that point too, you have the fact that they didn't pull Goff out. I don't think that was ever even a conversation, because you've heard Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes both speak to this, where they say we had to do our job too. We bring in Jared Goff, to do his job, and he knows what his job is. But we, as the coach and the GM, as an organization, we have to fulfill our obligation to Jared Goff. In 2021, we didn't give him a team, right? They had zero cap, basically. They had all this dead cap because of what the Quinn Tricia era did, and Bob Quinn, buried this team in debt, which they're just now digging out of. Like, this is the first year that they really dug out of it, and they have their own dead cap that they've attributed to their own issues, but it's minor compared to, gosh, it was like what, 65 or 69 million dollars in dead cap in 21. They had more dead cap than cap available. Let's put it that way. So, and that's not active roster cap, where you've got the top 51. This is dead cap that they had to deal with. So they didn't give Jared a team. I mean, who was our receivers? Rashard Perriman, Tyrell Williams. I think that was about it. And they're both hurt, I think, by week 1.
Yeah. So I went to Dan Campbell and I went to Goff's very first game, San Fran versus the Lions at home at Ford Field. And warming up, it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, who barely played at all. Raymond, who really didn't play all that much. And then who was it? Perriman, because he played the first game. And there was nobody out there for wide receivers, and Hawkinson was getting most of the passes, and after halftime, they knew it was all balls going Hawks' way. So I don't remember seeing St. Brown out there very much. I just remember watching St. Brown and Khalif Raymond doing all sorts of drills with each other pregame and tossing the ball back and forth and doing all their stretches together. And they seemed to have really good chemistry right in the very beginning. But they really didn't have much. And they went toe-to-toe with the San Fran that day. They almost came back from quite a deficit to tie that game up, but they just didn't have the team back then.
Yeah, so St. Brown really didn't turn on until, the last 6-8 games of the season.
Yeah, I don't think he got a shot early on.
He wasn't ready enough. So I just posted my link tree in the live chat there, so that'll bring you to all the links. Everybody that's in there, I've seen some people asking about Facebook. We do have some Facebook pages and private groups. It's not heavily utilized. I was really deep into Facebook the first 8, 9, 10 months that I did this last year. And that's why I didn't really start the YouTube. It was filtered to YouTube. It was, advertised on YouTube as far as being available, but we didn't really attempt YouTube until October of last year. So all the growth that you've seen on this channel has been really since October of last year. And then that's why we're sticking with YouTube, because obviously it works. But the link tree is there if you guys want to know where the rest of the links are for different podcast channel or different chats, different social medias, and more good news before we wrap up today. So website hopefully will be done May 1st. So last year we started building the website. The guy that I hired just kind of disappeared. So now I have a new company that's going to be building the website, Bluehost, and the merch store will be reopened at the same time. So we'll have some custom gear for you guys. We'll be doing, different types of things. You want to help support the channel, but 2, we're going to do meme theme style of t-shirts. So if you guys want something, made, you just tell us, and you don't have to buy 10. You can just buy 1. If you want something specific, we can typically have it mocked up within a couple of days and available for you. So that you can go out and support your team. If you're going to a game and you've got 10, 12, 14 people going and you want to have a special shirt made up, we can do that. No problem. If you want, cool. You want your podcast or, your Twitter handle or whatever to be on a t-shirt, to do some walking, marketing, we do that stuff too. So I'll be putting it up here probably in about a month or so. It's going to take some time. It's going to be a 60-page website. It's probably going to take a full year to build, but it will rival some of the best sports websites out there, and it's just going to be a long process. But I'm excited to finally get all this stuff rolling. So anyway, appreciate you guys being here this morning. Eric, appreciate you joining the show again this morning, and I'll catch up with you off air too. But the Rise and Grind morning show next week, Tuesday and Thursday, of course, will be right here at Rocked On Syndicate, Rocked On Detroit Lions, part of the Rocked On Podcast Network. We do have a special, Sunday, I believe you and Tony are going to be on, Eric. That's the plan?
Yeah. Yep. So we're hoping for Sunday at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. So our first new episode of a Sunday episode will be with Eric and Tony. Tony is a current and former coach in Canada. So bringing more football knowledge and perspectives to the channel. We have some other, things planned that we won't speak about until it actually happens. But it could be big. It could be huge for this channel. And hopefully we can get those little wrinkles ironed out. But at least this Sunday, we're going to have a triple header lineup with 3 of us on it Sunday night. And we'll be preparing the show for you guys. So if there's anything you want, to talk about or have us talk about, just let us know by dropping us an email at info@rockedonpodcastnetwork.com. It's the dead season right now. There's not a whole lot going on until the draft. But after the draft, it's going to pick up like crazy, and there's going to be a lot of great content spilling out everywhere. So I'll get back to making some videos, doing some player profiles. If you guys want any players done, again, just drop us a line, info@rockedonpodcastnetwork.com. And I'll try to get a video done within 24 to 48 hours and get it posted. Appreciate you guys this morning. Eric, go ahead and let everybody know where to find you and your Uper Lights.
Sure. So uperlights.com. Check it out. Come check out my rocks. Check out my stuff. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. All that stuff. And Will, guess what I did last night?
What'd you do?
I started a Twitter. So I went on X. I started a Twitter. I don't know what the handle is yet. It's like Uperlights 15768 or something. So I don't know what. I got to figure out how to change the name so it's simple. But they gave me a name or something yesterday. I know nothing about it, so I followed you and a bunch of other people. I'm trying. I'm trying to get into. I'm not a computer person, so I hate technology because it never works. But when it works, I love it.
Right.
Yeah. So I do have one question for you before we go. Did the Lions ever do their visit with Stiggers?
Yes, I believe they did. And there's a couple other teams that have been doing Quantez Stiggers as well. But I think that Quantez Stiggers had his visit. Gosh, that had to be a month ago.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I never heard anything. I knew they were going to do it, and then I never heard anything.
Let me take a look at my notes here. Hold on here. So
I kept meaning to ask you.
Yeah, what's funny though is you have a lot more teams that are in on the Stiggers lottery here. He's an intriguing prospect, man. He really, and I know I use that word a lot, but I really like Stiggers. I think it was around March 6th.
Oh,
might have been around March 6th, but yes, I'm pretty positive that March, early March is when they did it. Doesn't mean that he won't come back in. I don't know if there's a need for them to bring him back in. I really don't know how all of that works, but I don't know if you bring in a prospect more than twice. I don't.
So was he one of their top 30 visits then?
So he was a pre-draft visit, obviously. I don't know how that works because he's from a different league.
Yeah.
And he's draft eligible, so he's obviously not a pro day guy. He's not a college pro day guy. He's not clearly wasn't at the Lions pro day. He's more of a top 30 or a combine visit,
like a UFDA kind of guy, undrafted.
You know what? I think he's a top 30. He has to be a top 30. I think that's what he'll count against. But he was at the Shrine Bowl, so it's just kind of weird. It's just a weird situation. Things that I have to figure out because it's going to happen probably more and more often as time progresses here. But he participated in the Shrine Bowl in January. Obviously, he showed enough to everybody to be invited to the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine, and he was one of the Lions' 30 pre-draft visits.
Okay. Yep.
So that's all I got right now as far as my quick notes. I'd have to go back and look at some other things to give you more answers, but that's it. That's it for the Rise and Grind Morning Show on Thursday. Eric, it's a pleasure as always. And to the Rock Down Detroit Lions subscribers, appreciate you guys for being the best sponsors and supporters of this channel. Don't forget, we have major jersey giveaway April 24th, pre-draft party. We're going to be doing about a 4-hour show. It's going to be all the draft talk, the final mock draft that will be 100% completed. And we'll kind of figure out what the Lions are going to do. Hopefully we'll see if we can get lucky again this year, but we're giving away 4 jerseys. We were going to give away 2, but now we're giving away 4 because the Bulge Army stepped up, donated a lot of money. They wanted to impact the community and help the community. Doesn't mean that they can't win a jersey because they're all entered, but it's for good causes too. So, a lot of these donations will be used for future endeavors, which is Children's Hospital, and bringing a smile to someone that may not have one. That's the goal this fall, and hopefully partnering up with some other super fans to really bring some joy to some kids that love the Detroit Lions. So, all right, you guys, appreciate you. Eric, appreciate you. You guys have a great morning. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.